My name is Joseph Rapp. I'm a lead educator here at the Mathias Ham Historic Site with the Dubuque County Historical Society. We are standing in front of the oldest documented log cabin and building standing in the state of Iowa. So the story of this log cabin is complex and it's fascinating, but this is not where it was built. Some of our viewers might be aware that on a corner of what is now 2nd and Locust Street is where this log cabin had been built. We know it was built in July of 1833, so it'll be 190 years old this year. We're going to fast forward from 1833 to April of 1917. The siding on the structure was being removed, and a group of people had gathered and decided it should be preserved. It was dismantled, but it was moved up into Eagle Point Park and it was reassembled there. And it sat there for several years, several decades. It was used as a picnic spot in each room at one point. But we'll fast forward again to April of 1965, year of the Mississippi flooding. But the Mathias Ham Mansion had been converted into a museum, and so this was brought to the grounds here from up in Eagle Point Park. And we had actually a retired staff member who had worked for the crane company who took it from Eagle Point Park and brought it to this site at that time. That was his first job out of the Army, he told us. So the building has been moved 3 times. We've had some recent restoration work done on it. Some very generous people arranged for that. But the stories about the log cabin and its date of construction have been somewhat mysterious at times, and we do know that a French-Canadian fellow named Louis Ariando built the log cabin in its original spot for another French-Canadian fellow named Baptiste Lepage. And it was constructed so that you would live in one side and work in the other. And this is a dog trot style log cabin. There are lots of different styles of log cabins out there. We do have another log cabin that is at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium grounds that was brought from across the river in Illinois. So this one is also available for people to visit when they come to the grounds for a tour. It was contracted to be built within 2 weeks' time in July of 1833. At one point, one side of it was the site of a very small grocery in the early days of Dubuque as a village, and then it was a residence, completely a residence. One of the men who lived in this log cabin when it had the appearance of a sided and shingled small house was a man named William Newman, who had been a blacksmith, and his nephew-in-law was Mr. A.A. Cooper of the Cooper Wagon Works, and he learned his trade from William Newman. And Mr. Newman actually died in this log cabin in 1885, but the log cabin was lived in by various people after that time up until 1910, 1915, and then was empty and was about to be torn down, and then the group of people gathered to preserve it. So when we look at the house, the park department, when it was up in Eagle Point Park, they added the 2 chimneys that we see in the fireplaces that are inside, but there was a stove of some sort that was available that was used inside. So it would have been wood burning at first, and then they burnt coal. As far as I know, there was nothing of any kind of what we call modern central heating in this at all. So some of the early lead miners in this part of the country, especially in southwestern Wisconsin, northwestern Illinois, they were digging for the lead ore, they were mining for it, and they often did not take time to build a fancy little log cabin to live in. So some of them, when they were digging, would use the trench where they fell asleep. Some of them found little cave openings, some of them lived in the mine openings in the hillsides. But the story is that someone had observed some of these early lead miners coming out of these holes in the ground, and in southwestern Wisconsin someone nicknamed them as badgers, so that has stuck as part of Wisconsin folklore. But the lead miners would have had a structure similar to this, as a temporary shelter. This is our Hilton Hotel size version for the Mathias Ham Historic Site because we accommodate school groups with this structure. This is larger than what most of the miners would have had. There are the remains of 2 small badger huts, badger holes, in southwestern Wisconsin on land that is a hillside in the town of Potosi, and there is a trail that leads to those 2 called the Badger Hut Trail, and people are free to climb the hill, up the hillside and up the trail, and they can see where the remains of those 2 temporary shelters were at. So you would see the progression here at the Mathias Ham site is that a progression from a simple badger hut living in to a log cabin to a farm stone cottage and mansion that would have shown the changes in someone's wealth through the years as they were involved in lead mining and lead smelting in the area. At the windlass at the Mathias Ham Historic Site, this is our interpretive center on the lead mining in the region. In the city of Dubuque and surrounding areas, there are estimated to be between 700 and 2,000 digging and mining sites. So I'll ask the school kids when I have them on tour with me, do you have veins on your arms? And they look, and they do. But I'll say, you know, the lead miners in some locations look for veins of the lead ore in the ground, and then in other places where they dug out that lead ore, they went into mine shafts. So we have created a mine shaft here that we can share the story of mining with safety. We're on the same site as the home of a former lead miner as well. The windlass is an ancient form of a crank or a hoist. We get lots of visitors who assume that this is for a well, and that's a good guess, and it would have been. But this would have been very hard work for the lead miners to pull up a bucket that would be attached to the rope here and bring up the heavy lead ore along with limestone rock. One of the fun things is we'll ask the kids, what's the first thing that you hit when you dig into the ground? And they will answer the dirt if they think about it a little bit more. Bedrock, the limestone. So when we look at the mine shaft opening here, it is to appear as if it's timbered with rock to hold back the dirt. One of the things about lead mining that comes from mostly adults, the question is, were there a lot of accidents in lead mining? Not so much as in coal mining. Coal mining was done in parts of Iowa and out east as well, but not the type of collapses and cave-ins that are part of coal mining history. That wasn't so much part of the lead and zinc mining history here because of the bedrock being limestone primarily. So depending on how much they were bringing up at the windlass, you could have 2 guys working here. They would load the lead ore and the limestone onto, in some places, a stone boat, which would be like a wooden sled to be pulled across the ground by a horse or a team of horses or donkeys. So the mining and the digging of the lead ore was unique for each spot where it was done in this whole area. But there was also a certain uniformity to that. So when someone might share the story of a particular spot where it was done, you might have some evidence of how it was hauled away when it was brought above ground in a different way than it might not have been done at another location 2 miles down the road, for instance. So each site being unique, but still a lot of similarities. This is our mining interpretive center. This is a replica lead mine. And these gates and these doors are based on actual locations in this region of the Midwest. Our volunteer blacksmiths were actually the men who made these gates for us down at the River Museum. So every year for 4th of July we do have this open for visitors to come in. So this size of a bucket is actually a copy of one that had been found in an earlier lead mine, and This is a great size for when the men would be putting in the lead ore, the galena as they called it, the gray gold. Galena is a Latin word for lead. I like to ask the children if they speak Latin. They say no, I don't either, but it is known as galena, in the town of Galena, Illinois, named after it. We get to compare the weight of a piece of limestone with the weight of the lead ore, the gray gold, the galena. But this was hauled away to smelting furnaces in the area, and when it was melted down and poured into forms that were easier to sell, such as this one, and other longer bars that weighed 70 pounds, they were called a pig. So one of the things that we can relate this interpretive center to in the city of Dubuque is the shot tower down along the riverfront close to the railroad bridge, because the lead ore would have been used there for the manufacture of shot for bullets for a few years in the 1850s, early 1860s. So at the Mathias Ham Historic Site, where we're standing, Mr. Ham actually had in the slope of the ground here in the back part of the property a barn, and there may have been perhaps other outbuildings. But it was in 2010, the year 2010, that some of the leadership at the Dubuque County Historical Society moved forward for creating the interpretive center, the replica lead mine. So construction began. This is actually a concrete bunker. It's safe to be in. We're not going to have anything collapsing, and it has been treated in such a way that the inside walls appear as if they are limestone underground, and kids love it. So our day here at the Mathias Ham site is coming to a close, and we are looking forward to you coming to visit all of the structures here at the Mathias Ham site when you pay either your first visit or your 100th visit if you've been here before.